Alright, BLUELOCK's whole objective, as we all know, is two things: to create the best striker in the world, and for Japan to win the World Cup. Every character in this series has an ambition to complete these two goals, fighting for a spot on the Japan U20, proving and competing against other players in BLUELOCK. We all know the deal. However, there is only one player who is the sole exception to both of these goals, and that is, of course, Shidou Ryusei, the demon of BLUELOCK. Shidou, a fan favorite character who doesn't care about both of these goals, living for the sake of what he calls explosions, and is somehow still in debate for one of the best players in the whole series, maybe even that #1 spot. So with the NEL coming to a close and the World Cup arc coming closer and closer, I want to talk about the Zesty Demon's role in the rest of BLUELOCK, and why I believe Shidou will not play for Japan in the U20 World Cup arc. I know Shidou's a fan favorite character, one of mine as well, but I won't let that bias affect this video. I'll be analyzing Shidou's character, his philosophy, and his role, and how all of that might lead him to play for a different country in the World Cup and actually compete against Japan. So I'm sure Shidou doesn't need an introduction, but it is good to know information that we may have forgot in the past arcs. Obviously, we're introduced to Shidou in the second selection as one of the top scorers in his stratum, and when you get a first look at him, you just know he's a threat. He was literally beating up players just for fun. He doesn't care about teamwork or sportsmanship when we're introduced to him as well. This is pretty essential to his character as we know it, and it's pretty important for later in the theory, some reasons why he might not choose to play for Japan. Alright, those are the things I wanted to highlight in the recap. The first thing I actually want to cover is his philosophy. I've touched on it earlier, but Shidou really doesn't care about being #1 or any title like that. He quote-unquote lives to just play football. It's said in his infamous U20 dialogue right before we see one of the best goals in the series. He believes his whole existence is to play football. The pleasure he gets from getting a goal, his whole fertilization seed stuff, we all know it. I think this is one of the more important things to know about his character as well, because it directly correlates with what Shidou wants himself. For example, most players like Isagi and Rin want to become the best. Shidou doesn't care about a title like that. He just wants to play, have fun, and live for those explosions. Since his philosophy isn't stuck up on titles or anything, we know he isn't chasing to be the #1 player, but is instead chasing that, I guess, high he gets from playing football. And this not only affects him, but the people around him as well, his teammates. Again, he doesn't really care about others if they don't make him explode, but characters that do make him explode, he'll want to surround himself with more, as it gives him more pleasure, aligns with his philosophy, and stuff like that. Alright, saying explode can be taken out of context so easily, but anyways, this is why he doesn't care about characters like Kunigami, who never really gave him a challenge, compared to Sai, who was challenging him with every single pass. Sai was making him explode, which made him enter the flow state and achieve his best football, as his philosophy, which is explosions and goals, lined up with his gameplay. So I feel like that's one of the first parts of his mentality that we do need to get out of the way. He doesn't really care about anything else besides explosions and what helps him achieve those explosions. Even when he was chosen to play against BLUELOCK in the U20, he didn't even care about that. The system that got him in the game in the first place, he was solely playing for his explosions and reaching his best football, or in this case, his best way of living. So I believe the same logic applies to the U20 Japan team. If he sees another opportunity where there is a better football for him, he will go ahead and just take that opportunity, even if it's against the BLUELOCK boys. And that's really just one part. His mentality can play a role in why he might choose to represent another country besides Japan. This is the opposite of someone like Isagi or Rin, for example, who want Japan to win and want to represent them in the World Cup. His philosophy chases the best football, so if he has an opportunity where he believes he can play his best football, he'll go ahead and take it. Now, what are those opportunities? We'll get to that later in the video with the predictions. We still need to cover a little bit more about his mentality, his role, and stuff like that for Shidou's character and to understand why he won't play for Japan. Shidou's will or willpower is something else we need to talk about. Another thing BLUELOCK did was change your way of thinking. You know, the whole egoist thing, I don't gotta explain it. Again, it's still the same thing about scoring his own goals, living for explosions and whatnot, but it doesn't seem like Shidou is the type to change his philosophies. His will doesn't change. Compared to everyone else in BLUELOCK, let's just take Isagi and Nico, for example. Nico was willing to change to a defender role because of Ego and Isagi. And Isagi changed his mentality too many times to count. His whole character is about making change. But nobody from BLUELOCK was able to tame him and change his ways, so I severely doubt that he'll turn into the team player that the Japan U20 team needs. In my opinion, he'll forever be that Joker card to switch the script, like his original role in the U20 versus BLUELOCK match. If this is the case, it'll turn into a team to highlight one player's specific qualities instead of everyone else's qualities that BLUELOCK has been training. There's also the fact that Shidou can get red carded and is super violent. He really just isn't that player that Japan U20 needs as a leader. They'd much rather go for the Itoshi Rin option, who is super good and like Shidou could have the team built around him, but he also works well within a team. Passing, defending, devouring, and being devoured, you get the idea. Basically, by centering the team around someone like Rin, it feels like everyone has more chances to shine, compared to if the team team was centered around Shidou, it would quite literally just be centered on Shidou, being the attacking option and whatnot. The U20 is another prime example. If I asked you to name any other forward besides Sendo or Shidou from that team, you wouldn't know. So if he doesn't care about switching his mentality, he won't care about switching the way he plays, such as going 1 versus 21 on the pitch, not working well with teammates, and stuff like that. You can make the same argument for barou. He won't switch his king-like mentality, and the team will be centered around him. And yeah, that's true. I personally still think barou is going to be a joker card, but barou doesn't seem like the type to switch to another country, or there isn't any hints or reasons to. The difference between barou and Shidou is that explosion mentality, where he'll go wherever lets him explode the most, which isn't limited to Japan. So even though barou still has his king-like mentality where the team is centered around him, he doesn't have any reasons to switch sides. We've also seen him adapt to players like Rin, unlike Shidou. And yeah, we also know he still can't play with Rin, as seen in chapter 244, where they're deliberately being subbed on and off. I know that a popular theory was that Shidou would be able to team up with Rin and PXG, and that means Sai can come over and help them link up and stuff like that, but that doesn't seem like the case here. I feel like it would be way more poetic for Rin to finally beat Sai, rather than Sai joining the Japan U20. I feel like Rin's character arc will never be completed until he beats Sai. Just being acknowledged by him isn't enough. And with Shidou, I could totally see him wanting to play with Sai again, and if he is given that opportunity, he definitely would take it, even if that means going against Japan and the BLUELOCK boys. Alright, now let's talk about Shidou's role as a character. And what I mean for a role as a character is like what he does to add to the plot, right? For example, Corona's role is to be a support player, not really a rival to Isagi, which makes sense as a lot of people already are. So in Shidou's case, what I think his role is as a character is to always be the villain. Now, obviously, villain in football terms, like he's their rival, he's always playing against them, not an actual villain. But I mean, damn, beating up players for fun, the way he talks, doesn't care about sportsmanship, and when you play against him, he's an absolute threat. He fills all the qualifications for a villain, I'm not gonna lie. And as cool as it is to see Shidou play with the BLUELOCK boys and maybe use him as a joker card, you already have barou to fulfill that role. And again, he would take the spotlight away from the other characters in my opinion, meaning there was not really any point for developing everyone else. However, if you play it on another team where only a few characters were developed, that means spotlight can be evenly shared, just like the U20 match, where we saw Aiku, Sai, and Shidou pretty much get an even amount of spotlight and highlight all of their skills. It would be so hard to split it between a whole team of BLUELOCKers and Shidou. I mean, that's why PXG is splitting up Rin and Shidou as well. So not only does the plot support it, but if Shidou were to play for another national team, it would, one, give the team that we don't know too much about a super destructive player who can flip the tides of the games himself, and two, be able to highlight Shidou's plays because we don't know too much about the fodder background characters. So not only is his mentality fine with switching sides, his role just might end up being the villain of the series, or one of the main rivals. I guess that's a better way of saying it. Saying villain in a football anime is kind of goofy. Antagonist. The word I was looking for was antagonist. I don't know why I couldn't figure this out earlier when making the script, but editing just now, I thought of it, so that's probably a better definition than villain. So just imagine I said antagonist. Now back to it. The whole point is Shidou's character is in line with switching countries. From his role to his whole philosophy on football, the evidence is shown right there. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds. There's a lot of restrictions to playing for a different country in the World Cup, so this is where the theory part starts to come in. How will Shidou play for a different country in the World Cup? So the first and most logical approach is that Shidou's parents are from two different countries, obviously one being from Japan and another from another country. This is kind of the easy way to go about it. Make Shidou half Japanese and then half something else, but it's the one thing that makes the most logical sense or has the most sound reasoning. Everything else has some sort of restriction that can be applied, but it's an anime. They can make it however they want. Now, what country could this be? We have no idea, and honestly, I'm blanking. Maybe France, as that was his NEL team pick, and it would provide reasoning as to why he picked it. And we know he has experience playing with the PXG boys. They do seem like the team with the most talent regarding their players, like Charles, Chappie, and some of the players we haven't seen. I even asked some other people in the BLUELOCK community as well, such as my good friend Balakor, and he said Shidou doesn't look Japanese at all, which is absolutely correct. I mean, he doesn't look anything like the other BLUELOCK boys, and that we should look at South America / Africa. Now, Shidou has a choice to either represent his birth country or his parents' birth country, so if we assume one of his parents are from South America or Africa, that could totally be a reason how he joins another team. Shidou as well hasn't actually played for Japan, so he's not restricted to it as well, so he still has his choice. And it's BLUELOCK as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they made one of his parents from Spain and then have Shidou team up with Sai in the U20 World Cup. For plot reasons, it could just work. Shidou's backstory is yet to be revealed as well, and it seems like the author still cares about him by highlighting his plays in the Week 4 games. And as of this recording, the Week 4 games have ended, which means the PXG game is right around the corner, and we may just see his backstory during it. His backstory could reveal his dual nationality or just show know his parents from different countries, something along the lines of that. If Shidou meets those criteria, he could easily play under a different country, and there's that. In my opinion, this is probably the easiest way to go about it, and the most likely way he could approach it. It is pulling your leg a little bit. It comes out of nowhere, but that's one way they could look at it. The whole point of this video is not the how, but more of the why, if that makes sense. There are still a lot of loopholes and restrictions on which country to represent, so I'm trying not to spend too much time on it here. But if Shidou does end up switching sides, it follows his philosophy of wanting to chase those explosions, fulfills his role as a character as a villain or an obstacle, and we still don't know his backstory, so he could very much have parents from different countries. As much as I would love to see Shidou play with Japan and win with the boys, it would be much more in line with his character to be sort of an obstacle or a threat against BLUELOCK and our main characters, as that's what his character has been since the beginning with Kunigami, Isagi, and all the other players. It would give importance to the World Cup teams as well. I don't think they'll have only Shidou as the star player, but if they do give one of the teams BLUELOCK is going against Shidou, it's a way to make them a big threat. It would be one way to make the opposing team super scary compared to the stacked BLUELOCK team we all know, and match him up with maybe some other players we know, or even some of the new Gen 11 players. It would be more of an even fight, and I think we all know that. Whatever the case is, I'm super excited to see what the author has in store for Shidou and his character. Just a reminder, this is a theory and discussion, not me flat out saying that Shidou won't play for Japan. This is the author's story, and I'm just trying my best to predict it or throwing out some ideas. So I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Shidou will keep playing for Japan and play with the BLUELOCK boys, or do you think it's possible for him to be their opponent during the World Cup arc? I personally don't think all players from BLUELOCK will stay in BLUELOCK. We still don't know how the club system works as well, but whatever the case is, I'm super stoked to see what the author has in store. There is so much potential for the World Cup arc. Like, every game in the World Cup arc has the potential to be as good as the U20 game. That's actually crazy if you think about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this theory and discussion while we're in a slower part of the series. If you watched to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Hiryo, and I'll see you guys in the next one.